to thenewshouse.com. I'm Katrina Tulloch. Joining us today, we have a man who's been called the conscience of the New York Times, journalist and author Bob Herbert. Mr. Herbert has worked for the Times as an op-ed columnist discussing social trends, politics, and urban affairs. His work has been known for shining a spotlight on societal injustices. He's worked as a correspondent for NBC, and today he's here at Syracuse University to finish off the University Lecture Series of 2011. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great. Love it.
In the last column that you wrote for the New York Times, you wrote about how young people are facing a lower standard of living than that of their parents. So what are some ways that you've seen that message manifested since that column was published?
Well, it's clearest when you look at the unemployment statistics. You know, potentially, if you project forward over the lifetime of a person who's, say, in his or her early to mid-20s now, it is likely, unless trends change, that their standard of living will be lower than their parents. And I mean, I think that's tragic. The whole concept of the United States has to do with America's promise, you know, the American dream that people talk so much about. Well, a key element of the American dream is that one generation will do better in terms of their standard of living, economically, in terms of their educational attainment and that sort of thing, than their parents and their grandparents did. And that, we're in serious danger now of that reversing itself. And it's clearest when you look at how difficult it is for young people to get a job. Even those who are coming out of college with a 4-year degree are having trouble getting employment that they can live on, which is one of the reasons why so many young men and women are moving back in with their parents. For those youngsters who do not have a college degree, who maybe have just a high school diploma or have dropped out of high school, they're in a horrendous situation. I mean, jobs are just terrifically hard for them to come by.
What advice would you give to young people who are preparing for that lower standard of living? I mean, how do we deal with a message like that?
Well, I'm not sure I would advise them to prepare for a lower standard of living. You know, I'm not one to step on people's dreams. I came of age in an era back in the 1950s and 60s where everybody had big dreams. You know, you really felt you could set the world on fire. And I think young people should continue to have those big dreams. But I think they also need to be aware that it's a tough road that they're following. You know, so you have to work really hard. Education is more important, higher education is more important than it ever was to maintain a middle-class standard of living. And I would just tell young people, you know, hurl yourself into the things that you really love, understand that you need to be disciplined and work hard, and hang on to those dreams, you know. And there is a good chance that in the long run, things will work out for the best.
Now, what do you think is the biggest benefit then for young people right now? What parts of the industry need young people more than ever?
I almost resist that kind of question. I'll tell you why. I don't think that people ought to gear their lives towards that which they think will necessarily be economically satisfying. I don't think that should be their only goal. So what I think is more important is that you follow your talents and your longings. And so I would suggest that if there is a particular field that a young person feels that he or she is cut out for, and they really love it, and they get pumped when they think about it, I would say pursue that, even if you might think that a different field you might make more money. I can give you an example about that. You know, two fields that were supposed to be a lock in terms of essentially making a lot of money were business, if you came out of a really good school with an MBA, and also the law. You know, a law degree was supposed to be, you know, your ticket to ride or whatever. Well, you find out now that the honchos in business who were supposed to be so wise about matters economic got us into terrible trouble. Another field, you know, I mentioned the law, And now a lot of lawyers are having trouble finding employment, a lot of young lawyers. And in fact, there are young lawyers who are being hired in legal jobs, but as temps, so they're not making a lot of money. So I say that it is still important to follow your dream.
You've spoken and written extensively about what you think is incompetency and irresponsibility of American leadership.
Yeah.
Were there specific moments that you've seen American stability and leadership just fall apart that really drove you to conclude that America has, as you put it, lost its way?
I think that there were so many moments. I'm from New York City and was in town when September 11th happened, and it was just an enormous tragedy, as we all know, and an astonishing shock. And I had been in the service a long time ago, so I was not opposed to striking back against those who had struck us. But that had nothing to do with waging war in Iraq, for example. And we went into Iraq, and there was that long, tragic war where so many people were killed, where so many Iraqis, innocent Iraqis were killed, where so much money was spent, wasted, in my opinion, by the U.S. government. So that was just a tragic error on the part of our leadership. I think the idea that we didn't better monitor our banking practices in this country. We didn't better monitor our mortgage practices. We haven't done anything about the influence of big money in campaigns. We've let our infrastructure go to rotten to ruin. We've let our educational system deteriorate. So there's just endless examples that I could give you where I think our leadership failed us. And you were talking about young people, and if you get away from the idea of standards of living for a moment and sort of look at what's going on in the country, I really would look to young people to maybe address some of these issues where I think, in fact, as I said in that column, we've lost our way as a society.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to your book coming out and to your lecture tonight.
Great. Thanks so much.
And thank you for joining us. Be sure to check out thenewshouse.com for upcoming coverage on the University Lecture Series.